Welcome to Heart Stories, a podcast proudly brought to you by the Caulfield Grammarians Association. I'm your host, Doreen Brown, and this season we celebrate the journeys, passions, and values of remarkable individuals, many of whom share a connection to the Caulfield community. This series is a platform for heartfelt conversations that shine a light on creativity, leadership, and a sense of community that define extraordinary lives. At Heart Stories, we believe every achievement begins with a story. Together, we'll uncover the challenges, milestones, and lessons that have shaped our guests. Through their insights, we'll explore how shared values and a commitment to making a difference inspire both individuals and communities to thrive. So thank you for joining us. Settle in, open your mind, and get ready to discover stories that inspire, empower, and unite. This is Heart Stories. Let's begin. So today on the Heart Stories podcast series, I'm joined by Tom Small. Tom is an experienced property professional with over 15 years in the industry and a strong background in property development. He has successfully delivered over $350 million in multi-residential developments, ranging from investor-grade properties to high-end luxury projects. With his deep expertise, creative approach, and commitment to quality, Tom offers a unique perspective on industry trends, development strategies, and the fascinating intersection of creativity and business in property management. So let's welcome to the podcast, Tom. Hey, Tom.
Thanks for having me.
So I'd love to begin today's conversation with your personal journey. So can you start by telling us a little bit about your time at Caulfield Grammar? So you attended Caulfield from 2003 to 2008, and how your experiences there shaped your early ambitions.
Yeah, sure. I attended Caulfield campus, and I was probably one of about 15 or 20 relatives to have attended over the time. So it was something that I felt was always going to happen.
Yep.
So it's quite a normal transition to start at Caulfield Grammar. But yeah, really enjoyed my time there, probably especially my friendships. I was probably more interested in the sporting program than the academics. But I think, the type of character that the school molds you into is pretty good, and just being part of that community after schooling as well has been quite special.
And what first ignited your passion for property development? And was it something you always had envisioned for yourself, or did it kind of develop along the way?
Yeah, it was probably in my mid-teens where I first discovered it. I was probably more interested in the design aspect and just taking in nice, houses and buildings around. Some of my family have been in the property industry as well, so I got chatting to them, and it sparked the interest there.
And have there been any personal or professional mentors that have significantly influenced your career?
Yeah, many. My dad being the biggest, but yeah, I'm a big believer of getting to know and signing up with mentors. I think it's really important. Most of what we're trying to do has been done well before, so we may as well pick the expertise of those people who have been there before us.
Excellent. No reason to reinvent the wheel, right?
That's it.
Now, you've been working in your industry for over a decade. Can you share a defining moment in your career that really shaped the professional that you are today?
Yeah, I think it was a decision to swap careers from a construction management side to the property development side.
Mhm.
I wasn't really enjoying the construction side of things. I probably wasn't all that good at it, but the easiest decisions to stay with what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
But there was an opportunity to move across onto the property side, and and I think that was the best decision I ever made. It kind of got me back on track with what I was wanting to do.
And with over 350 million worth of multi-residential projects, this is quite an impressive portfolio. Are there any particular projects that you're most proud of, and why do these stand out to you?
Yeah, I think they've all got their nuances to them. We just finished delivering some apartments in Toorak here in Melbourne. And that was sort of 6 years in the making. It
Wow.
took us through COVID and the construction cost escalation, and and all the interest rate rises. So we're sort of hit with everything there. To see that through without taking any shortcuts and delivering, you know, a quality product there was something we're pretty proud of. Yeah. And
That's
it's good at the end of that process to look back and take in all the learnings along the journey and to see sort of where you've been able to pick up from there.
Yeah. What were some of those key learnings, do you think? As you said, going through COVID, interest rate hikes, all those kinds of things. What were some of those key takeaways for you?
I think it's just all about just keeping an open mind. At times it can seem like the world's caving in, but
Yeah.
just keeping an open mind, take a deep breath. You can always work through it. There's always a way to work through a problem, and I think that's what really sets you apart as being a good performer. You know, it's not just the management in the good times, but when there's, you know, when there's proper problems arising, how you tackle them and get through them.
Yeah, and manage those. Absolutely. Now, property management does require balancing vision with execution, as you've just shared, particularly with that experience. So, how do you maintain creativity and innovation while making sure that you're delivering exceptional quality?
Yeah, I think there's got to be time for creativity and play, and you know, it's time spent thinking and dreaming at the start. You've got
Yeah.
to come up with that creative concept without any strings attached. There's always going to be, you know, time for budgets and time constraints that will come at you. But I think if you set that creative platform from the beginning, you can then, yeah, slot in the technical aspect of the project, and all of the, you know, the budgets and timings around that.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, your work embodies that creativity and dedication. So, how do you see creativity playing a role in your industry's future?
I think it's part of sort of every aspect that we're doing, not just the design in that creative sense, but it's how we get an advantage on our competition. So how we're structuring deals, how we're looking to market, you know, messages to our customers. I think we've got to be creative in every aspect, and that's an enjoyable part of the role to be able to, you know, unpack something and add your flavor in it to get a better result than what otherwise might be.
And can you share a time where you had to think outside the box to solve a challenging problem on a project?
There was a particular issue, yeah, a couple of years ago when we were dealing with one of the utilities authorities on a project of ours to have some infrastructure installed. So they essentially have a monopoly on the cost and time impacts because of who they are. We felt like we were getting a pretty raw deal, which was going to impact our project quite significantly. So we decided to you know, get into the politics a little bit and lobby the ombudsman and get it to where a position where we felt was a bit more fair and at market rates, and we got a good result off the back of that and just were able to continue as planned. So that was a good achievement, I think.
Now, property development is often considered technical and precise, but you bring this creative approach to it. So, how do you balance those technical demands of this with regards to the artistic and creative aspects of design and development?
I think as long as we've got a really clear direction on our creative side, then we can slot the technical side in there pretty well. There's always going to be things that we have to pare back on or remove from the creative side, but we can, if we've got that clear direction, we can, you know, make those decisions for the technical aspects, you know, accordingly to not, you know, pull the entire creativity out of it.
And what do you think sets a great leader apart in your industry, particularly when leading projects of such scale and complexity?
I think it's probably pretty similar in every industry, but I think it's just if you're being a good person and you're honest, I think that's going to go a long way. The industry becomes pretty small when you've got a bad reputation, but I think if you're fair and you're honest, I think that goes a long way. And you know, if you've got bad news to deliver to someone, I think you just deliver it truthfully, and you'll get respect for that for the long term.
Now, the property industry is always evolving. So, what trends or innovations are you most excited about, and how do you see them shaping the future?
Yeah, I think right now I'm most excited to see how we've got quite an imbalance of supply of dwellings in Australia versus demand
Yeah.
that's there. So interested to see how that sorts itself out. There's quite obviously a big gap in what we can afford to pay and what it costs to deliver the product. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm quite excited to see how that plays out. I think we're going to be quite busy for some time in the property delivery side of things. It's just
Yeah.
about waiting to see how we can sort that imbalance out. I also like to look for clues in the history of property cycles and the history of economic cycles to see what's sort of coming next. Usually, history repeats itself.
Yeah.
We don't usually get a pandemic and a war and things
No.
like that all at the same time, but I think
Yeah.
there's a fair few clues when you look back in history. So I like to keep an eye on that.
Great point. Now, what does community mean to you, especially in the context of working on multi-residential developments?
Yeah, I think the key things for us when we're delivering a project is we want to ensure that our customers, our residents who are purchasing their homes, they feel a sense of belonging, they feel safe, and when they walk through the door to their home, they feel that sense of the weight that's dropped off the shoulders and their home. So privacy, security, and that connectivity usually through an owners corporation, is pretty important to us.
Now, you've worked on luxury and investor grade projects. How do you approach designing and building spaces that foster that real sense of home and connection that you've just mentioned for people
Yeah.
who are living there?
I think when it comes to in purely investor grade, it's a little bit different because
Yeah.
your investors are driven on a formula and a spreadsheet rather than what the building might look like or feel like.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more of a technical side to that up front, but I guess at the end of the day, we're still delivering it. We've got our brand on it, so we've got to be proud of what we're delivering. There might just be a little bit more of a technical focus on getting the floor plans to a position where it maximizes the investor's return.
Yes.
Uh, but it's still got to fit within our brand.
Yeah. For the younger alumni or students who look up to you, what advice would you give to someone that's aspiring to enter the property development industry?
Yeah, I'd just say just give it all a go and try
Yeah.
everything. There's a lot of different aspects of property development, and people tend to get into property development from a lot of different areas, whether it be construction, valuation, a legal or accounting background.
Yeah.
It's actually quite unusual to see someone come out of uni straight into property development straight
Right.
through.
Yep.
But yeah, I find it. I just say find out what you're passionate about and be curious about that. Learn everything you can. Speak to as many people as you can, and just keep learning.
Reflecting on your career so far, what are some of the biggest challenges you've faced and how have you been able to overcome these?
I think it's back to that time where I changed careers from construction to property. It was about when I was about 26. Yeah, at the time it feels like quite a big leap of faith.
Yeah.
And I think looking back, it was an easy decision, but at the time it was, it felt like all you've done was, study, work hard to get to this position in your career, and you're about to kind of put it in the bin and change.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, I'm pretty happy that I made that decision. Uh, and it helps, talking it through with some good family members and good mentors that point me in the right direction.
How do you keep the passion alive for what you do and what continues to inspire you in this field?
Just being curious. I get motivation from learning something new. I'm
Yep.
constantly reading and doing to find new ways to do things. I think there's a huge amount of satisfaction when you can achieve some success in something that you deliberately went out to learn, or you got wrong and learned because of failure. I think
Yeah.
that's quite satisfying. That keeps me motivated to keep learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And we tend to learn more from our mistakes than the things that went right. So I think, yeah, that's a really great point to share. Now, looking back on your achievements, what does it feel like to know that you've contributed to building spaces where people live their lives and create memories?
That's the goal, isn't it? If you can do that, then we've done our job well. it's a bit of a balancing act because it's quite a complex journey delivering the finished building, and most of that's driven by commercial decisions and a commercial mindset. But as soon as we hand the keys over, it's all emotional. So it's important for us not to forget that while we're on that commercial journey to deliver, that we are building someone's home. So it's important to keep that aspect and ensure that all our partners that are delivering the project are remembering that.
As well. Yeah, absolutely. Now, could you share one story or moment from your career that brought you immense pride and why?
It's probably not entirely property related, but it's a constant event, and I think it's just the ability to be, if owning a business, it's the ability to be competent enough to provide for my family. Really, I think
Yeah.
the experiences and the memories that we create off the back of being able to provide. I think that's probably the proudest moment. Yeah.
I love that. Love that. Absolutely. Everything you're doing is basically creating that foundation and
Yeah.
support for your family as well, which ties in beautifully to my next question, which is what role do you believe personal and professional values play in creating a legacy?
Ultimately, whatever you stand for is what you're going to be remembered for. So, I imagine it would be hard work creating a legacy off a false persona.
Yeah.
For me, the values come back to the really clear direction I have on where I want to go with every aspect of my life. It's all tied into one. So, if I know I'm going, on the right path, I know my values are intact and I'm acting by those.
Love it. So, what is next in your career, and are there any projects or dreams that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, I probably feel like I'm just getting going, to be fair.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about, we should be going through quite an active period in delivery in Victoria, especially over the next probably decade. So I feel well placed to play a good part in that with the partners I've got. So that's quite exciting. We're not quite, in the happy days just yet off the back of the previous cycle that we're going through, but I think there's some good times coming up.
And how do you envision sharing your experience and giving back to inspire the next generation in your field?
I've got some good mentors that have taken the time out, even if it's just a phone call or for me to ask what I think is a silly question of them. So it's just the time and listening to their little words of wisdom. So, I'm happy to give my time to anyone who wants to learn about property or has got any questions about, any aspect of it. Yeah, I'm more than happy to share my time in that way.
Well, thank you, Tom, for sharing your experiences, expertise, and heart stories with us today. I'm sure these will resonate with our listeners as they reflect on their own journeys, ambitions, and the legacies that they want to leave behind as well. Thank you so much again, and yeah, all the best with your future endeavors as well.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Heart Stories. A heartfelt thank you to our guests for sharing their story, wisdom, and passion with us today. Their insights remind us of what makes creativity, leadership, and community so impactful in shaping meaningful lives. Brought to you by the Caulfield Grammarians Association, this podcast celebrates the shared values that unite us and inspire us to grow, connect, and lead with purpose. We hope today's conversation has sparked reflection on your own story and the legacy you're building. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story. Share it with your friends, family, or anyone who could use a dose of inspiration. And be sure to join us next time for another powerful conversation with a guest who has a story worth telling. But until then, take care, stay curious, and continue making an impact. This is Heart Stories. See you next time.